Is it possible? Listen carefully now. Is it possible that in seeking healing, we delay healing? Is it possible that even in going to God, in praying, in affirming, we are still seeking a condition more than we are seeking God? And so the very fervor of our seeking postpones the appearing of harmony. Yes, that is possible. And I am not saying, and do not hear me as saying, that healing is wrong, or that we should not know harmony in body or affairs. No. I am saying that when healing becomes the object, consciousness is fixed on effect. And as long as consciousness is on effect keeps its position. When God becomes the object, effect can shift without our touching it. Now let us for a minute accept that statement. The suspense of this entire subject lies right here. You believe the problem is in the body. I am telling you the issue is where your attention rests. The body may register pain. The day may report fatigue. The nerves may tell their story. But the question is not what the outer is saying. The question is, where is your worship? Where is your trust? Where does your gaze return in the quiet moments between words? If the gaze returns to the symptom, to the clock measuring progress, to the mirror evaluating pallor, then you have identified your God. You have found what you bow down to. And you can't help that as a human being, you say. A human being can't help that. Yes, so they say. But we are not condemning. We are uncovering a law. We who are within range of this voice are not strangers to the ritual of checking. You know it. I know it. And if we are honest, we have been measuring the day by signals from the body, by the calendar of how long has it been, by the statistics of what others experience. Every glance becomes a tiny prayer to matter. Every listen for a heartbeat, every test of a limb is a confession. I believe you have power over me. Don't forget this. Every act of fear is worship. Every time you look back to see if it is gone yet, you have crowned it again. Now tell me what I would ever need of you if God already is all presence, all power. Nothing. What could a symptom add or take from omnipresence? Nothing. Now you come to the principle that will rule our whole journey. There are no detached outer effects. All that appears as your outer is the picture cast by inner recognition. Therefore, the work is never on the outer. The work is turning from the idol called result to the living presence that is cause. And I say to you, with all the gentleness and with all the authority of law, that the moment you cease chasing the relief and begin to acknowledge, to revere, to rest in omnipresence as the only presence, the picture is free to change. Not because you forced it, not because you treated matter, but because cause, recognized, must externalize as its own harmony. All right, here is the paradox that will save you time, tears, and the weary eyes of watching. Stop watching. Stop bargaining. Stop using God to get something, and let God be God where you are. When healing is no longer your object, harmony is no longer your hostage. And in that surrender, in that simple turning, the very thing you desired begins to appear, not as a target, but as a byproduct of truth realized. All right, let us look, tenderly but truthfully, at the routine we have let become our liturgy. We wake and we take inventory. Pain? Where? How much? How sharp today? Energy? Up a notch? Down a notch? Perhaps none at all. Mood? Clouded, clear, anxious, numb. Sleep? How many hours? How many interruptions? How many dreams? Then we read the reports, numbers, graphs, color codes, and we permit them to appoint the priest of the day. Hope if the number went down, despair if it went up. And we do not even notice we have had a worship service before breakfast. We have asked the oracle of matter, "Tell me how I am," and we have believed the first voice that answered. Now do not hear in this a condemnation. No, this is not wickedness. This is humanness. A human being can't help that, they say, and humanness is always getting relief, getting reassurance, getting a sense of control. It is all respectable, it is all reasonable, and it all keeps the mind tethered to the problem world, because the very act of getting requires an object outside of ourselves to give it. The body becomes the treasurer of our good and the jailer of our peace, and we keep begging it for a parole. Now let us for a minute accept the fact that every consultation is a prayer. What are you praying to? When you consult the reading, you are saying, "Be thou my truth." When you consult the sensation, you are saying, "Be thou my law." When you consult the calendar, "How long has it been? How long until the next test?" You are saying, "Be thou my measure." Now tell me, what are you bowing to? The reading or the presence? The number or the one who is life itself? What can a number add to omnipresence? Nothing. Nothing. What can a sensation subtract from infinity? Nothing. Yes, but I must be responsible. I know that sentence. I have said it. All right. Responsibility is not policing effects. Responsibility is guarding consciousness. Responsibility is standing at the door of thought and refusing admission to any authority but God. Responsibility is to acknowledge presence, not to chase pictures. The thermometer, the blood pressure cuff, the scan, the mirror, the calendar, the internet search, the neighbor's story, the statistic, the prognosis. Listen, each one can serve you as data if you are free. But each one becomes your master the moment you ask it for truth. The more we consult effects, the more we accept effects as cause. And the more we accept effects as cause, the more we bind ourselves to the very chain we are trying to shake off. Do you see the subtle idolatry? Not a golden calf in the desert, but a digital screen on the nightstand. Not incense, but fear. Not genuflection, but checking. Every fluctuation treated as final, every uptick enthroned, every downtick worshipped, and the day's hymns sung accordingly. I feel better. I feel worse. That is the human way. And I tell you, not harshly, but as revelation, that while consciousness rests there, it must reap there. For where your reverence is, there your experience will circle. Now, gently, we loosen the fingers. We do not throw away instruments. We remove from them the scepter. We do not become careless. We become centered. We begin to measure the day by a single fact. God is the only presence, the only power, the only cause. And in the degree that that becomes the first consultation, the outer ceases to be a tyrant and returns to being an effect, free to rearrange itself without our watching, without our bargaining, without our fear. Now let us accept this law, not as poetry, not as inspiration for the wall, but as operative principle. There are no detached outer effects, all flows forth from consciousness. When did that begin to be true? It never began. Like 2 times 2 is 4, it is law. Whether you and I know it, like it, argue with it, it remains law. And as long as we try to work on the picture, on the shadow, on the film, we remain busy with what cannot originate itself. Now, what do we mean here by consciousness? Not positive thinking. Not a little willpower to hold off the dark. Not the personal mind chanting phrases until it is tired. Consciousness, in the sense we are using it, is the state of awareness you are entertaining as reality. It is what you are acknowledging as cause. If, deep down, you are conceding 2 powers, God and something else, then the awareness you are carrying will project a world of two-ness. If, even for a moment, you rest in the recognition, I and the Father are one, and in this one there is no second, then that awareness externalizes as harmony. That is not suggestion, that is law. All right, this shows you why chasing the body is chasing an effect. We polish mirrors and cry that the face will not mend. We scold the radio, plead with the speaker, and forget the broadcast isn't in the box, it is in the tuning. You do not buff a mirror to change the countenance. You change the countenance and the mirror reports. You do not argue with the radio to change the program. You change the station. You do not repaint the thermometer to make a summer day. You recognize the weather is not in the dial. So it is with the body. Adjusting the body while consciousness remains in fear is repainting the dial. You may get an interval of relief, yes, and then the same fear, the same belief in external power, must paint another picture and call you again to worship it. But this makes it my fault, you say. No, no, don't accept that. This does not blame you. This unveils impersonality. It is not your mind or my mind manufacturing evil. It is the carnal mind, the universal hypnotism of believing in powers apart from God, impersonal, without law, without cause, without substance. It is not person. It is suggestion. And suggestions have no authority except what we lend them. The remedy is not to fight them. The remedy is to recognize presence, to rest in the fact that God is the only presence, the only power, the only cause, until that fact is the air of your thought. Then the suggestion drops for lack of belief, and the picture clears without your touching it. Now don't forget this. If the outer is effect, the work is never on the outer. Never. The work is on recognition. The work is the quiet inner consent to truth. The work is withdrawing power from the dial, from the mirror, from the speaker, and letting cause be cause. In the degree that we accept this law and live by it, the suspense of watching effects dissolves, and harmony appears, not as a prize we chased, but as the natural report of realized presence. Now we come to the question that stands behind every prayer you have ever uttered in the night, and every glance you have cast at a clock or a mirror. Which are you really seeking? God or healing? Don't rush to answer. Let the honesty have a moment. Because as a human being, you and I know how easy it is to dress getting in holy words. Father, heal me. Lord, fix this. Spirit, change that. It is all language of acquisition, respectable, devout, and still getting. Now tell me, if God is omnipresence, what could you add to God by getting a better symptom report? Nothing. Nothing. What could you take from infinity by a momentary flare of pain? Nothing. If God is the only presence and the only power, the only cause, then to chase an effect is to confess a second presence and a rival power. And the chase itself becomes the proof of your belief in that rival. That is why you feel fear. It is the echo of your own confession that something besides God governs you. All right, let us for a minute accept this. God is not a means. God is not a technique. God is not a lever we pull to bring about a desired condition. The instant God is approached as a method for results, the mind is still bargaining with the world of effects, still saying, "You out there have the say. Give me the password to make you cooperate." That is idolatry in prayer robes. That is bowing to the picture and asking God to repaint it, instead of resting in the light that dissolves the picture. Here is the spiritual substitution that ends the bargaining. Instead of, "I want to be healed," let consciousness rest in, "God is present. God is the health of my being. God is the life of my life." Not as a chant to get something, but as the description of what is. I and the Father are one. That is not a wish. That is law. And in the degree that you abide there, the activity of that recognition appears as harmony, naturally, inevitably, because cause cannot withhold its own nature from its own expression. But if I do not ask for healing, won't I be stuck as I am? No, no. That fear is the very thread that ties you to the old loom. The fear says, body has power, time has power, statistics have power. And every time you run to check, you strengthen your creed. Withdraw the worship. Withdraw the scepter. Let God be God where you are, and the picture, having lost its borrowed authority, must change or vanish. So our prayer is not a plea, but a posture. Father, Thou art here, now. Thou art my life, my strength, my wholeness. In this presence, harmony is not a prize, it is nature. And as we rest there, quietly, without watching, without bargaining, the chase ends, the fear loosens, and the law you have heard today begins to fulfill itself as the only possible outcome of recognized truth. Now we come to the moment that looks like surrender and turns out to be authority. The instant you stop chasing. Is it possible that in the very act of striving to be healed, you have been fastening the rope around your own wrist, taking your place in a tug-of-war with a picture? Yes. Yes. The harder you pull, the heavier the opponent feels, because you are supplying it with your attention, your life breath. And then you say, "But I am the patient. I must fight." And you do not notice that in calling yourself the patient, you have ordained a healer and patient world, with disease enthroned as a real second presence to be negotiated with, measured, placated, fought. Drop the rope. The opponent has no footing but your grip. All right, let us look at the inner mechanics, so that this does not remain poetry. Attention is life. Where attention goes, power seems to go. The chase is simply attention organized into panic. My body, my timeline, my emergency, my outcome. Do you hear the false center building itself, plank by plank? Each time you check, you lay another plank. Each time you rehearse the case, to yourself, to God, to your friends, you nail another beam into the scaffolding that holds up the very picture you wish to dissolve. You are not wicked. You are simply lending your life to an effect and then begging that effect for mercy. What does stop chasing look like? It is not carelessness. It is not bravado. It is the quiet refusal to keep feeding the image. Practically, it means, Stop checking for proof. Stop asking the mirror to be your prophet. Stop negotiating with God as if God were a means. Stop rehearsing your case, when it began, how long it has lasted, how complicated it is. Withdraw the brief from the court of effects. Return, again and again, to recognition. Father, thou art here, now. I and the Father are one. Not to get, not to get. To be still, to bear witness. That is all. 10 times a day if need be, 50 times, in the night, in the morning. You are not doing something to matter. You are consenting to cause.
But what if I let go and nothing happens?
No, no. That fear is the last disguise of the same idol. Letting go is not resignation. It is alignment with the only cause. Consider the shadow on the wall. You can run at it with your fists and it dances with you. You can turn on the light and it vanishes without a protest. You did not defeat a shadow. You withdrew the belief that a shadow is substance. So it is here. When you cease stirring the water with anxious hands, the silt settles of itself and the stream reveals what was always there. Clarity. You do not make clarity. You stop obscuring it. Now do not forget this. Release of outcome is not giving up. It is withdrawing power from effect so cause can be recognized. The minute you are no longer asking the picture to change, you have ceased crowning it as law. In that inner neutrality, yes, neutrality, the law that always has been operates. Not because you forced it, not because you earned it, but because cause cannot withhold its own nature from its own expression. And you will feel it first as a loosening, a softening of the will to manage, the breath returning to its unlabored rhythm. Then, without watching, without bargaining, the outer, which has never been more than a report, begins to tell a new story. Not to get, not to get, to be still, to bear witness. And in that stillness, the opponent you feared proves to have been your own grip on the rope. Now let us be very plain about this word, witness. To bear witness is to stand in the presence as transparency, not as manipulator. To let consciousness be clear glass through which the light shows forth, rather than painted glass trying to color the scene. Witness is not doing to matter. Witness is consenting to God. Witness means I will not try to repair a picture. I will acknowledge cause until the picture has no argument left in me. All right, that is our method, if you need that word, our practice. How then? First, acknowledge the temptation without granting it authority. Yes, I feel fear. Yes, the thought shouts, look, measure, compare. All right, we see it. We do not crown it. Second, turn from the picture. Deliberately withdraw the eye and the ear of your heart from the report. Third, rest, briefly or long, inside the simple fact, Father, thou art here, now. I and the Father are one. Not words to wound the problem, not phrases to stab at a symptom, but recognition. Fourth, wait until the inner sense of presence replaces agitation. How long is that? Not time. The shift is not in minutes, but in center. When agitation loosens and a soft, living quiet comes, you have moved from the porch to the house. Do not make a battle of ideas. Mental argument is the old game of getting. One thought trying to defeat another thought. That is fencing on the surface of the sea. Recognition is different. It is yielding. All right, now let us be still. It surrenders the sword and steps out of the arena. It does not say, I will defeat pain. It says, in thy presence is the end of belief in second powers. And that very non-resistance drains the electricity from the picture. Now let us come down to the hour of temptation. It is 3 a.m. You wake, the body shouts its message, and the mind reaches for the old altar. Clock, screen, mirror. Stop. Recognize the call as sacrament. Turn. Father, thou art. Close the inquiry, open the awareness. Breathe once as one who is not alone. Wait until the feel of presence, however slight, takes the edge off the hurry. Then sleep or rise, either is holy now, without peeking at the dial for permission to trust. Or an envelope arrives. A word is spoken. Diagnosis. The machinery inside starts up. Statistics, timelines, stories. Stop. Be still and know. You do not argue with the word. You remove its scepter. Presence fills the room, if you will let it, and the figures stand there without command. Or a flare-up returns, an old pattern revisits. Do not name it relapse, that baptizes it. Name it opportunity to witness. The same sequence. Acknowledge, turn, rest, wait. Remember, this practice is not time-based. It is a shift. Sometimes the quiet descends in a breath. Sometimes the mind must be turned 10, 20 times in an hour. Do it. Each turn withdraws belief. Each moment of yielded recognition thins the fog. There are no detached outer effects. Therefore, you need not chase any. Hold to one truth until it holds you. God is the only presence, the only power, the only cause. Healing? That is the fragrance of the rose you did not manufacture. Your task, our only task, is to stand as witness until the scent fills the house. All right. Now we come to the simplicity that the mind resists, because it leaves no heroics for the ego. One truth is sufficient. Not many truths, not a new technique each week, not a shelf full of books with notes in the margins and another queue of videos waiting after midnight. You know how we have done it. Verse upon verse, method upon method, prayer upon prayer, stacking them like sandbags against a river of fear, and then feeling unworthy because the collection did not produce a result. That is the old getting under a new name. It is the same chase, only now the quarry is a method, and the stopwatch is measuring how spiritual we can become by dawn. Now let us for a minute accept this law. Truth is one. It cannot be added to. It cannot be divided. When did 2 times 2 begin being 4? Never. It is law. So it is with truth. One statement, realized, contains all. I and the Father are one. Or, if your heart rests easier there, greater is He that is within you than he that is in the world. Either one, lived, not recited, is a whole treatment. Why? Because it does not describe a piece of God. It declares the indivisibility of cause and its expression. The sun does not come in fragments. It is the one light by which all lamps are judged to be shadow play. Yes, but I don't know enough. That's not true. That isn't true of a single one within range of this voice. There is not anybody here who cannot take one statement of truth and begin to abide. Don't forget this. The issue is never the quantity of truth remembered. The issue is willingness to live with one truth until it becomes your consciousness. The mind loves accumulation because it can count it. Spirit loves abiding because it can live it.
How then? Select one axiom. I and the Father are one, and make it your dwelling. Not a charm, not a battering ram. Let it be your address. Whisper it once, then be still, and let the meaning widen of its own spirit. Driving, washing a dish, awake in the night, return there. Not to get, to be. When agitation rises, return there. When the picture shouts, return there. Hold to it until you feel the subtle transfer of center from the outside report to the inner fact. That is abiding. And here is where we tie the knot we have been pulling through these hours. Technique collecting is another form of symptom watching. The eye is still on effect. Only now the effect you are checking is my method working yet? Do you see? You have crowned a new idol. Abiding removes the crown. You withdraw power not only from externals, but from your own tools. In that inner relinquishment, the one who is already present reveals as harmony, because cause must externalize its own nature. One truth is sufficient. 1. Live with it until it lives you. Then without watching, without bargaining, the picture will report what consciousness has accepted. All that the Father hath is mine. Already mine. Now we come to the great enemy. Not disease, not lack, not age, but fear of externals. Name them and see how they sit on thrones we have carved. Germs wearing white coats in the imagination. Diagnoses stamped with Latin to sound like law. Hereditary theories drawing family trees like verdicts. Birthdays creeping up like bailiffs. Odds and percentages dressed as prophets. Headlines blaring as if omniscience were in the newsroom. Neighbors' stories repeated until they become our liturgy. All right, let us be honest. We have been intimidated by uniforms, of science, of numbers, of calendars. And we have not noticed that every time we feared, we crowned. Every tremor of fear is a coronation. And then we ask why the picture looks royal. Now let us accept this law. Fear of externals is what makes externals appear powerful. There are no detached outer effects. All that seems to act upon us from without is but the echo of what we have credited within. The belief in an external cause must externalize as condition. It must. If you concede that food has power for harm, weather has power for harm, germs have power for harm, examinations have power to damn you, numbers have power to bind you, time has power to diminish you. Do you see? You have written your creed of two powers, and you will live in that world until you withdraw your signature. Fear of food, fear of weather, fear of germs, fear of examinations, fear of numbers, fear of time. Different costumes, one actor. A power outside God. That is the whole show. But what of a diagnosis? A diagnosis is a name given to an appearance. It is not a law. Names do not legislate. Labels do not create substance. They classify an image on the screen. The only law is God's being, here. Now tell me, what can a label add to omnipresence? Nothing. Nothing. What can a prognosis subtract from infinity? Nothing. The hereditary chart, the age curve, the survival rate. They are measurements of appearances,
within a level of belief. They report what fear and faith in externals have collectively drawn as a picture. They do not bind the one who abides in the recognition of one power. Do not hear me as saying, argue with them. No. Do not wrestle with an image. You will make it real and give it your strength. When the fear thought rises, headline, number, anniversary date, stop. Do not enter the ring. Turn. Quietly, repeatedly, turn. Father, thou art. Here. Now. I and the Father are one. Let the figure stand where it stands while you stand where truth is. You are not fixing an effect. You are withdrawing worship from it. You are not denying a sensation. You are denying it authority. And in that very act, fear thins. In that thinning, the supposed power of externals dissolves. In that dissolving, harmony appears, not as a prize won from the world, but as the natural byproduct of realized presence. All right, this is the practice. Not bravado, not defiance. Recognition. 10 times a day if needed, 50 if necessary. Each turn is a dethronement. Each quiet, Father, thou art, removes a scepter. And the moment fear is gone, the show closes for lack of audience. Greater is he that is within you than anything parading as power in the world. Recognize that, and the parade passes without command. All right. Having unseated fear and turned from the parade of externals, we come now to the question of motive. Why are you practicing? Be very honest. At first, it is to get relief. Of course it is. A human being can't help that. A cry goes up from the nerves, and the mind rushes to the altar. But that is infancy. That is the first reach. If we remain there, always checking, always pleading, always measuring, we are keeping the self as the project and the symptom as the boss. Now let us for a minute accept that spiritual maturity is not the art of getting. It is the grace of giving. Not giving money first, though that may come. Not giving performances to prove how holy we are. Giving what? Giving attention to God. Giving witness to truth. Giving peace to others, even as our nerves quiver. That is the turn. Notice what happens the moment motive shifts. The center relocates. Instead of my pain, my timeline, my progress, the language becomes God's presence, God's government, God's activity here. Do you see? The self steps out of the spotlight. And in that very move, the hypnotism thins. Because hypnotism requires a strong me staring at a strong problem. When the me yields to thou, Father, thou art, the whole stage loses its lighting, and the picture cannot play with the same authority. This is why giving is not loss, but liberty. I am only rich in proportion as I can give. Give attention to the one. Give the silence that refuses to repeat fear talk. Give the simple acknowledgement that God is the only presence in this room. But what can I give when I need so much? Watch. Small, quiet forms, no trumpet. A single act of forgiveness where resentment had been rehearsed. A prayer for another that does not try to change them, that does not outline their story, but beholds their oneness with the Father. I and the Father are one, for them as for me. Then silence. A little service, washing a dish not your own, writing a note of gratitude, yielding the last word. A firm refusal to spread fear. You hear the tale, you do not pass it along. You bless instead. These are not distractions. These are alignments. Each one removes the getting posture and restores you to your function. To bear witness.
Do not hear me as asking you to escape your need by busying yourself. No. This is not frantic charity to impress God. This is law. Cast your bread upon the waters. Give forth from the recognition of one source, and you discover that source is infinite. When you give attention to God, you are not losing attention to your need. You are removing the hypnotism that made the need appear to be outside your being. In other words, giving is the mind stepping out of self-hypnosis. The loop of, how am I? How am I now? Breaks, and consciousness rises to its rightful office. Witness, transparency, sonship. And now tell me, what is the purest giving? Seeking God rather than healing. Relinquishing the right to outline the miracle. Father, thou art. Be thyself as thou art. I do not bargain. I abide. That surrender is the gift. Nothing is withheld when motive is pure, because cause cannot deny its nature in its own expression. In the degree that our motive turns from getting relief to giving witness, we stand above the body story, and the picture reports it. Harmony appears, not as something we got, but as the inevitable byproduct of the truth we were willing to give. Now we come to this word that sounds passive and turns out to be power. Waiting. Not waiting for. No, waiting for is the watchman on the wall with nerves in his eyes, counting minutes, interrogating the horizon, calling down to the heart, is it here yet? What about now? That is still bargaining with effects. That is still crowning a second power and demanding it change uniforms. Waiting, in the spirit we are speaking of, is different. It is serene receptivity. It is resting in the already present. It is the inner posture that says, Father, thou art, and stops there. Full stop. Serene. I fold my hands and wait, not for a sign, not for a sensation, but in God. Feel it for a moment. The mind, which has been a bookkeeper of symptoms and hours, closes its ledger. The body is no longer hauled before a magistrate for questioning. A quiet assurance, not fireworks, not parade, moves in where urgency had been renting a room. Breathing finds its natural cadence. Thoughts, which were pecking like birds at one window, lift and circle and are gone. And there, without effort, presence is felt as a soft authority. Not a thought about God, but a certainty of God. That is waiting. All right, don't forget this. Waiting ends suspense because it refuses the role of spectator at the picture show. The less you watch the condition, the more you become aware of presence. And in that awareness, the condition, being only a report, must either change its story or fall silent. Why? There are no detached outer effects. Law does not report to your eyes. Your eyes report to the law you acknowledge within. When you stop angling the mirror for a better angle and return to the light itself, the mirror tells the truth without your managing it. Now perhaps you ask, what of my human steps? Do I just do nothing? No. You may do what the day requires. See a practitioner. Consult a physician. Take a pill. Rest the body. Prepare the food. Pay the bill. Only do not worship the steps. Do not endow them with scepters. Outwardly, do what wisdom and kindness indicate. Inwardly, remain where cause is. Dependent on God, not dependent on effects.
The key is not the motion of the hands, but the ground of the heart. From that ground, the same act is either bondage or sacrament. Here is your line of practice. When a flicker of relief appears, do not pounce. Do not test. Do not run to the mirror with the old interrogation light. Stay where you are, the center, not the circumference. When a discouraging moment arises, do not announce it, measure it, and give it a throne hour. Turn. Father, thou art. Again and again. Think of the gardener who will not pry open the bud to see if it is obedient. He tends the root, trusts the law, and lets the sun do what only the sun can do. Waiting is tending the root. Waiting is trusting the law. Waiting is the mind standing aside so that grace can be recognized as the only activity. And then, without watching, without bargaining, the picture reports what consciousness has accepted. Harmony appears as naturally as dawn follows night, not as a prize grasped, but as a light revealed. Be still. Rest in the already present. Let the outer be the echo, not the conductor. In the quiet consent of true waiting, the miracle finds no resistance, because there is no watcher to demand it perform. There is only presence, and the naturalness with which it fulfills itself. Now go home and practice. Not to fight a body, not to win a case, to settle consciousness in God. If it is tonight, let it be tonight. If it is 3 in the morning, let it be 3 in the morning. Sit up if you must, lie down if you can, but remain with one intention. Father, thou art. We are not pleading. We are placing ourselves where cause is acknowledged. That is our work. Private, quiet, invisible to every eye but God's. All right, when the next flare comes, here is your line of practice. 1. Notice the impulse to check. Clock, mirror, screen, memory. Notice it as a signal, not a master. 2. Pause. A full breath. Let the hands be still. 3. State one truth, only one. I and the Father are one, or God is the health of my countenance, or simply, Father, thou art. Speak it once, then stop pressing. 4. Be still. Let the meaning widen of its own spirit. Wait until a soft, living quiet replaces the hurry. 5. When the mind runs, and it will, return. 10 times in an hour if needed. 50 if it takes that. No scolding, just return. 6. End in gratitude without looking for proof. Thank you. And close the ledger. Do not peek. Do not test. Let the mirror report to the light in its own way, in its own time. Now hear this gently. Every return to checking is a return to effect. It is not punishment, it is mechanics. Effect thinking sustains effect. The moment you crown the picture with your attention, you have handed it your scepter. Withdraw the scepter. Return to cause. If you find you have checked 100 times, turn 101. Each turn is law acknowledged. Each stillness dethrones a second power. Do not say, I don't know enough. That's not true. Within range of this voice, there is enough understanding to begin and to continue. The only requirement is willingness to practice rather than to accumulate. One truth is sufficient. 1. Live with it until it lives you. This is not heroic. This is faithful. This is not dramatic. This is certain.
Now, let the close be as simple as the law itself.
God is not coming. God is. Here, now. In the degree that you recognize that, the body and the life experience conform. Not by your managing, not by your bargaining, but by the inevitability of cause expressing itself. Go home. Be still. Bear witness. And let harmony appear without your chasing it. Serene, you fold your hands and wait in God.